This pack contains all of my favorite backpacking gear from 25 years of backcountry adventuring and over 10,000 miles hiked. But I don't think those numbers really capture why this gear is truly special. Not only have I put a lot of miles in on trail, but I've done so with a ton of different gear in a variety of different conditions. I've tested almost every sleeping pad on the market, over 70 different pillows, 50 tents, and 30 packs, not to mention all of the other little items that go into a backpacking kit. After all those miles, nights in the backcountry, and testing, these are my favorite pieces of gear and what I chose for this very special trip. The reason this trip is so special for me is because it's my first backpacking trip since my baby girl was born at the beginning of August, and I really want to make the most of it. I want to enjoy the trip, and fingers crossed for me, I might even be able to catch up on some sleep. I'm exploring a new part of the mountains for me. Normally I'd come down this valley that I've been walking and then head down one of 3 valleys that kind of pop out that way. But today I'm taking a hard left and heading up this valley into a part of the mountains I've never been to before. It's pretty fun. I'm off trail right now, kind of just exploring, but as I head that way, I should eventually pick up a trail that then takes me up the valley. The pack that I'm using is the Durston Wapta 30, and it highlights something that I quickly realized when I was putting together this gear list, which I'll have linked down in the video description, and that's that some of my gear is really ultralight focused. It's meant to be comfortable while I'm hiking, while I'm on trail. And then some of it is more comfort focused. It's meant to make my life at camp more comfortable. And because this is my first time using all of my favorite gear on one trip, it's gonna be interesting to see how the trade-offs between ultralight and comfort kind of play out, and whether some of my favorite gear was only my favorite gear because of its synergy with other gear that I was using on those other trips. My personal preferences for packs are that they have to be lightweight. I don't like carrying a lot of extra pack weight, like some Osprey packs like 6-7 pounds, which is crazy to me. So I really like the weight of the Wapta 30, and then it has to be able to carry that weight effectively. So a lot of the time that has to do with how the pack is put together, how the shoulder straps are constructed, whether there's a little bit of foam going down the back for structure with ultralight packs, and the Wapta 30, like I said, doing a very good job. The other thing I look for is access to items. I don't really like stopping for lunch or eating when I'm on trail, so I like to have a lot of pockets. And with the Wapta 30, I have 2 shoulder pockets on here. I have a bottom pocket and then a really nice side water bottle pocket so I can reach back, grab water, and take a drink without any problems. I thought the Wapta 30 was gonna be a really niche pack for me where I'd only take it on extreme ultralight trips, but I've been pleasantly surprised with how well it carries weight, and it's definitely become my go-to favorite pack. I'm also using a Nylon Flume pack liner inside the pack. Even though the Wapta 30 is waterproof, I wanna have the pack liner in order to really make sure I'm keeping my items that I want to keep dry, as well. If I do put my wet tent or some sort of wet item inside the pack liner acts as a barrier between my dry items and those wet items. The best place to pick up a Nylon Flume pack liner is from the sponsor of today's video, Garage Your Own Gear. And while Garage Your Own Gear carries pretty much all of the ultralight gear that I'm using on this trip, there's some items that you don't see very often that I'm gonna highlight for you as I go over my gear. And that's one of the best parts about Garage Your Own Gear. They carry the largest selection of ultralight gear out there, but then also a bunch of unique items that you can't really find anywhere else. I always get a ton of questions about the clothing that I like to hike in, so I'm gonna cover that quickly right now, starting with my hat. I bought the hat and the patch on Amazon that made it myself, so one of a kind. My go-to sunglasses now, not only for hiking, but for everyday life, are made by Ombraz. And what makes them unique is that they use a string that wraps around your head instead of arms. And what I really like about that is if I don't need my sunglasses, if it's cloudy out or I'm walking through some treed areas or I'm going inside, I can just hang them from my neck really easily. I don't have to worry about putting them on my hat or putting them in a pocket, anything like that. And then if I really want to put them away and slide them in my pocket, because they don't have arms, they're really low profile and they're much less likely to break. I use these now for running, for driving, for hiking. They're my go-to sunglasses for all my activities. The shirt that I wear is the Outdoor Research Astroman. It's a sun hoodie made of nylon, so I find nylon doesn't stink quite as bad as polyester, and nylon's a little bit more durable. I love sun hoodies because I'm able to put the hood on, have the long sleeves, and then not have to really lather up on sunscreen. With my hat and the hood, I really don't have a lot of exposed skin areas. For my pants, I'm using these purple nylon pants from Mountain Equipment Company up here in Canada. They're the Mica 2s, and I like them because, again, long pants keeps the sun off my legs, and because they're made with nylon, they dry quickly, they don't stink, and they're very durable for when I'm bushwhacking. My shoes for the last couple years have been the Hoka Speed Goats. I like them because they have a really good stack height to them. They're nice and wide, providing a good base so that I feel stable when I'm walking around and just keep my feet really happy. I use the Hoka Speed Goat. I think it was the 4s for my entire through hike of the Great Divide Trail. I put another like 800 miles on Speed Goat 5s, and I'm excited to be using the Speed Goat 6s now. My socks are toe socks from Exoskin. They're more durable in my experience than Injinji, and I like toe socks because they allow my toes to kind of splay and go into a more natural shape, and they also help prevent blisters. Another on-trail item, and one of the unique pieces of gear from Garage Doing Gear that I want to highlight, are these water bottle flip caps. What people used to do is they'd buy a 700 milliliter smart water bottle and a 1 liter smart water bottle, and then take the flip cap from the 700 milliliter bottle and then put it on the 1 liter so that they can get all the functionality of the flip cap. Since Garage Doing Gear started carrying the flip caps, you skip that entire step of having to buy the 700 milliliter bottle. You save a lot on plastic waste, and I find that the ones that Garage Doing Gear gets are a little bit better quality than the ones that Smart Water uses on their bottles. While I'm out on these solo trips, having a Garmin InReach has become a non-negotiable for me. Being able to press that SOS button and call for help is just a really nice safety net. But even more important for me is being able to check in back at home. I've been messaging back and forth with Steffi Poo, making sure that her and baby Josie are doing okay, letting her know that I haven't been eaten by any bears, and it's just really nice to have that contact, especially when you have a new baby at home. The InReach Messenger is my go-to InReach just because of the amazing battery life it has and how easy it is to use. I don't need all the navigation features that the InReach Mini 2 gets, and by the time this video comes out, Garmin will have probably announced the new Messenger Pro or Messenger Plus. I'm not sure what they're naming it quite yet, but what I do know is that it's gonna have photo and voice messaging, and that is gonna be so nice to have. Being able to receive and send pictures to Steph and the baby, as well as maybe being able to sing a lullaby to baby Josie before we all go to bed, is gonna be something really nice to have, because I'm out on trips for 50+ days a year, and it gets lonely, and I do miss my family. I found the spot where I'm gonna set up camp right there. I got a creek, several steps that way. I'm right in the middle of this alpine valley, 360 views. It's pretty cool. I'm gonna enjoy this spot, I think. The first thing I'm gonna set up is this chair. So my chair of choice for this year and for the last couple years really has been the Nemo Moonlight Elite, and there's a few reasons why. First of all, the case that it comes in also doubles as a ground mat, so if you're using it on soft ground or in sand, the ground mat's going to keep the feet from sinking in. The other thing is that it's very lightweight, 600 grams, not as light as the Helinox Chair Zero, but I'm willing to make that trade-off right now. And then the other feature that it has is a recline mode. So there's these toggles on the side, you pull them forward and it kind of raises you up, so if you're around a fire or you're eating or something, then you're sitting up nice and straight, and then you can toggle those things back and then kind of recline a little bit, take a load off. It's quite nice. The next thing I want to do is get my tent set up and get it all staked out and share that with you. Then we'll go over some of the stuff that I keep on the outside of my pack for access throughout the day, and then really dive into what I have on the inside, because there's some cool stuff in here. There's the unique things from Garage Doing Gear that I mentioned I'm going to highlight, as well as some new gear that you probably have never seen before, but I've kind of been testing under the radar recently that I'm really excited about, to the point that they're now part of my go-to gear. For my tent stakes, I'm still storing them in this All Man's Right holster bag. I'm still loving it, but for stakes, I'm not using groundhog stakes anymore, even though I'm still using MSR stakes. I'm using their Core series, which includes this big, long aluminum stake and then these smaller carbon fiber stakes. And I find a combination of these at different points over the tent area really get the job done and hold surprisingly well, and they're a lot lighter than the Groundhog series. The tent is another one of those extreme ultralight items. It's the Z-Packs Plex Solo. This is the light version. They basically took the Plex Solo, stripped all of the things that aren't necessarily needed on it, and then used a lighter weight Dyneema material. And this is the perfect tent for me. I don't need a lot when it comes to a tent, just something to protect me from the elements as well as bugs, and the Plex Solo Light does that. I've had this tent out in some good wind, good rain, and it's held up just fine, and it's roomy enough for me. Some people may find it a little bit claustrophobic, but for me, it's just fine and is enough room, even if I'm spending quite a bit of time inside the tent. I really like single trekking pole tents like this for a couple different reasons. First, I find them really easy and quick to set up, and that's something that I look for in a tent. The second reason is that if one of my trekking poles breaks, then I have my second trekking pole as a backup and can still set up my tent without having to scrounge around for sticks in order to act as that second pole. In the front pocket of my pack here, I keep things that I need access throughout the day. My go-to rain jacket now is the Rock Front rain hoodie. So this is a non-breathable rain hoodie, But I don't mind that because I find the breathability on rain jackets to be pretty subpar, and this thing gets the job done because it has a lot of mechanical ventilation, which I find more effective than breathability. So there's this big chest zip on here. There's gigantic zippers down the side, basically the entire length of the jacket, which is really cool. You can dump heat from this thing really, really quickly, and it's very waterproof with a silicone coating on the outside and then a PU coating on the inside with all the seams taped. The best part about this jacket is the price at $60. It's quite inexpensive, kind of in between something like a Frog Togs and some of the really expensive technical jackets. I also have my first aid kit in here, so this is just a lot of drugs, bandages, things like that. But there's another one of the Garage Your Own Gear unique items, and that's this repair kit. So I just keep this little repair kit in there. It has some thread wrapped around the top here, and then there's a little compartment. This is all 3D printed. There's a little compartment with a needle in there, so it stores right in there so you don't lose it. And then there's another compartment on the other side with repair patches for things like your sleeping pad or pillow. To top it all off, wrapped around the entire repair kit is some Gorilla Tape in order to repair basically anything. Gorilla Tape's pretty sick. This is made by Common Gear, and I just love what they're doing with 3D printing and making these all-in-one kits. My water filter is the Platypus Quick Draw because of just how quickly it filters, as well as the 2 caps. This filter, this specific filter in particular, has worked great for me for years now with over 1,000 liters of water filtered through it. And then my poop kit, which is one of my favorite parts of this entire system. So I have everything in this Poopmoji bag. I have the Bogler trowel, best trowel out there, serrated edges on either side for cutting through roots, very ergonomic grip, it's affordable, it's lightweight. This thing is just phenomenal. Then I keep some hand sanitizer in there. And then I have a bidet. So I use a backcountry bidet in order to get my butt nice and clean. I use this on top of one of my Smart Water bottles in order to introduce water into the top of my butt, and then the water kind of goes into the business area. And then I take soap, powdered soap from Peak Outdoors, lather it up in one of my hands, and then use that to give myself a little butt bath. I love this system because I get really clean, I avoid chafage, smells, I can stay clean down there for days on trail. The last thing is my cook kit, but we'll get into this because this is pretty cool too once we talk about my food and I start cooking dinner. It's starting to get cold up here, so I'm gonna try and get through this and so I can get to my clothing system. But right at the top, I have these Mayfly sandals. I love bringing sandals on trips because it allows me to not have to put on my stinky shoes once I've taken them off. I can throw these on if I need to go pee in the middle of the night or if I'm just lounging around camp. And what I really like them for is I can wash my feet and then put them inside of these instead of having to put them back into my stinky shoes. My ditty bag is also in here, and my ditty bag has some of the coolest items out there. I have my keys right at the top, and then my toothbrush, that's not that cool. But then I have this little thermometer from ThermoWorks in order to track the temperature over the course of the night, which is really good when I'm trying to dial in my sleep system. I can see how cold it got and then how my sleeping system performed, whether that's my sleeping pad or my quilt. I have a new battery bank from Nightcore here, the 6000K Carbon. So this is a 6000 milliamp battery bank that's under 100 grams, very lightweight, very good. It only has one USB-C port, but I find that that's enough for me. I also have my new go-to headlamp from Nightcore. Sometimes I'll bring the Rovivon flashlight, but when I know that it's gonna be getting darker a little bit earlier, like in the shoulder season, then I like to bring a headlamp. And this is the NU20 Classic. It's everything that the NU25 version 2 should have been. It's lightweight, it has a red light mode, it has 2 buttons, one for red light, one for white light in order to keep it simple, and then USB-C charging. I also have a pump in here, but it only weighs 9 grams. This thing has been phenomenal for me. It's made by Rex Creations. It's the PadPal pump, and it uses a USB-C cable in order to get power from something like a battery bank, and then in order to inflate your sleeping pad. And it comes with a bunch of different attachments here. It doesn't inflate the pad fully because it is so lightweight. You have to add a couple breaths afterwards, but I find that fine for how small and lightweight this is. The PadPal is definitely a unique item that is obviously carried by Garage Your Own Gear. I also have it on good authority that they're going to be bringing in another ultralight pump, so a competitor to the PadPal. So keep an eye on Garage Your Own Gear's new gear page to see when they get that in stock. Before we get into my clothing, because I need to get that clothing on, it's getting cold, I have my food bag, and I'm gonna put this aside because it's super cool. I wanna spend a little bit more time talking about it when I'm warm. It's not an Ursack, I'll tell you that much, but it's still bear proof. For my around camp layers, I used to use merino wool a lot, but I've shifted basically all of my layers to this Alpha Direct fabric. It's basically a fleece that's super lightweight, but extremely warm for how lightweight it is. I have everything from socks to pants to the shirt in Alpha Direct, and it's yeah, definitely become my go-to material. For my primary insulation, I'm not using a down product. It's the Enlighten Equipment Torrid Apex jacket. It uses synthetic insulation, which is gonna perform a lot better if it's humid or it's moist out. It just deals with moisture a lot better than down does. And I'm still using my trusty merino wool hat. Sometimes I'll bring the Alpha Direct hat if I'm trying to go as lightweight as possible, but I like this because it keeps my head warm and then it's long enough that I can pull it down over my eyes if it is the middle of summer and I want to keep the light out of my eyes and go to bed early. I have my sleep system all set up, but I want to wait until tomorrow morning to share that with you guys because temperatures are going to get below freezing, which is going to be the coldest that I've ever tested this quilt out. And I'm optimistic because the limit rating is to -5°C and it has some features that make it perform really well under cold conditions. Even if you have like some wind and other kind of things going on, it does a phenomenal job at reducing drafts and locking in heat. Right now I'm gonna share with you guys that food bag that I talked about as well as my cook system. The bear bag that I'm using on this trip is made by a company called Atotech. They're a Canadian company, so that's really exciting. And I'm just really excited about this bag overall for several different reasons. First of all, it is IGBC certified, just like with the Ursack. So they've tested out with bears and it's been able to hold up against them. So that's really cool to see. It's also very lightweight. For this 14-liter version, it weighs 197 grams on my scale compared to the 15-liter Ursack weighing 242 grams. This bag's made with similar material to Ursack, but also kind of different. It's more closely resembling the material that my tent is made of, but using much thicker fibers. With that difference in material, you get a few really cool benefits. First of all, it's touted as being rodent resistant. So that's a problem with my Ursack is I have had some rodents kind of chew through it and get at some of the food. If this bag is rodent resistant, that's gonna be really cool, and I'll have to get into some porcupine areas, see if they're able to get through. The material is also waterproof, which is gonna have a couple of big benefits. If you're out in the rain, an Ursack is gonna absorb that water, you're gonna end up carrying a bunch of water weight around with you. This bag is gonna shed the rain and not hold onto it, which is really cool. The other big benefit is that if a bear is chomping on the bag and you have some liquidy items inside of it, they're not gonna leak through the bag and then provide the bear with a reward, which is a pretty big deal for keeping bears and humans safe. The whole point of a bear bag is to reduce or fully eliminate the reward that bears get from human food and then reduce the association that bears might have between humans and food. The bear bag's another cool item from Garage Door and Gear. Currently, I think they only carry the black bear one, but I think they're gonna carry the grizzly one as well. And then inside the bag, I have my food for the trip, some Pringles, freeze-dried meal, fuzzy peaches. I have my breakfast for tomorrow inside this Rusby bag. So I love Rusby bags because not only can they hold boiling water, but they have this curved bottom to them, which is really nice for eating just basically anything. But I like for my breakfast is having oatmeal with some fruit and chocolate in there. I just cold soak it, really tasty. And then I have my pink titanium spoon. Obviously my pink titanium spoon is gonna be my go-to. And then we have my cook kit. And this is not your grandfather's cook kit. There's some pretty cool and unique items in here, starting off with this lid, which is a prototype lid that we're hopefully going to be releasing this fall. I'm partnering with Peak Outdoors, Braxton over there in order to design a lid that snaps onto pretty much any 90 milliliter titanium pot that's out there. And then you also have a spot for lighter in there and you can get a full fuel canister snapped in so it's not rattling around inside the pot. In addition, there's these holes on the top that you can slide your spoon through and then use your spoon as a lever in order to pour water out of the pot when you have the lid snapped on. For this trip, I don't have a fuel can snapped inside there, and there's good reason for that. And it's not because I'm cold soaking or anything crazy like that. It's because I'm using an ultralight fuel system on this trip. So I read about this online. Basically, you can take air horn fuel canisters. They use the same valve as isobutane fuel canisters. And then using the flip fuel, you can transfer fuel from an isobutane canister into one of these air horn canisters. The flip fuel is one of those cool items that Garage Door and Gear sells. Not only does it allow you to combine fuel canisters when you have a whole bunch of just a little bit of fuel in them, but you can do cool things like this. The air horn canister only weighs 20 grams. And then I was able to add 20 grams of fuel inside of it for a canister that only weighs 40 grams and could last me, who only boils water once a day, about 4 or 5 days. And the reason I'm able to get such good fuel efficiency, even with using my go-to ultralight stove, the BRS 3000, is because of this unique sticker that I have on my Toaks 550 milliliter light pot. This allows you to see what the temperature of the water inside the pot is, all the way from 60 degrees Celsius up to 90 degrees Celsius. And the reason why this is important is because the person who invented this realized that if you have a freeze-dried meal, heating the water up to 70 degrees Celsius makes it just as effective and doesn't really take that much more time in order to rehydrate a meal. So as long as you're filtering your water, you don't need to get it up to a boil, just get up to 70 degrees Celsius and you're gonna be A-okay. And I found with the BRS stove, it took my fuel consumption from 5 grams in order to boil 500 milliliters of water down to 3 grams. So you save a lot of fuel. And then I also have inside of here this Swedish cloth. This is just to dry out the pot after boiling water inside of it, as well as to take condensation off of my tent. So if it rained, I can wipe the rain off the outside of my tent. And then if there's condensation on the inside, I can wipe it down so I'm not carrying a whole bunch of extra water weight. And it's really nice when I get to my second camp after a high condensation or rainy day to not be setting up a wet tent. Dinner's ready, so I'm gonna chill, enjoy these views, enjoy my time out here. But it's tough. I miss my girls. I know it's gonna be a tough night for Steph, and yeah, being away from your newborn, it's not easy. But I'm thankful for Steph kind of pushing me to get out on this trip, reassuring me that she's gonna be okay. And I know she will be. I know she will be okay. But it's tough, tougher than I thought it was gonna be, and I knew it was gonna be tough. But I love backpacking, and I stacked the deck in my favor with this trip. Getting out to a beautiful spot, bringing my favorite gear, and I'm gonna be recharged when I go home. It's not that I like backpacking, it's I need backpacking. I recharge so much when I'm out on trips like this. It makes me the best version of myself, and I know I'm gonna get home and be able to show up better for my girls, and reminding myself definitely helps with missing them. I'm gonna put the sleep system through a good test night, and then I'll share with you guys tomorrow morning what I brought with me in order to maximize being comfortable and getting a good night's sleep out on this trip. Good morning. As hoped for, and I guess a little bit expected, I slept really well last night. Waking up this morning, the temperature is a brisk -1 degree Celsius, and then last night it got down to -4 degrees Celsius, which is right at the limit of my sleep system. Let's jump right into what I brought and how it performed. I set the quilt aside because that's an item I've been testing on the sly, and it has some really cool features that I want to take some time to share with you guys. So we'll start with the sleeping pad and pillow. Neither of these are ultralight items. They're actually quite heavy, especially this pillow. I brought the X-Ped Mega Pillow, and that's because of a few different reasons. First of all, it has a really good stack height, so when I'm sleeping on my side, I have a good amount of support from my head and my shoulders, so it really helps with not getting any sort of shoulder pain or my arm falling asleep. The second thing is that it's nice and wide. It covers the entire width of my sleeping pad. Until you experience that, you don't realize how nice that is. The third big thing is that it has a little bit of foam insulation on top of it, and that's pretty important when you're getting into sub-freezing temperatures, because when the air around you is cold, it's going to cool off the air inside the pillow, and then that can lead to your head actually getting quite cold and making you feel uncomfortable over the course of the night. For my sleeping pad, I actually had some troubles choosing which one I wanted to bring on this trip, because I knew I wanted to prioritize comfort, but I also wanted to prioritize weight. And the REI Helix that I ended up bringing is definitely not a lightweight sleeping pad. The other one that I was kind of tossing around as an option was the X-Ped Ultra 3R, but it wouldn't have been warm enough for the conditions that we saw last night. The REI Helix has a really high R value, which has made it toasty warm for me, well below freezing. But my favorite thing about this pad is its comfort. It has this dimpled baffling pattern, which you see on other pads, but for some reason on the REI Helix, it's the most comfortable out of all the pads that I've tested. Like I said, I've used almost every sleeping pad out there, and I keep coming back to the REI Helix as being the most comfortable. With other pads, I find myself tossing and turning quite a bit over the course of the night in order to relieve pressure points. With the REI Helix, I more just kind of shift positions, and I'm never really truly uncomfortable. The Helix is the pad that I consistently get the best night's sleep on, and that's why I chose it for this trip, and it didn't disappoint. Onto the quilt, and one of the items that I'm most excited about, which I never thought I'd say about quilts. I always thought quilts were kind of just all the same. They're just big bags of down, but with the Rockfront 400 Base UL, it's taking all of the best features of quilts out there, putting it into one package, and then including a feature that I've been emailing companies about for years, but Rockfront is the first to actually implement. Starting with just how the quilt is constructed, you have vertical baffles throughout the torso and then horizontal baffles at the feet. This configuration of baffles has been shown to be one of the best out there, and I'm glad that Rockfront's using it. The quilt also uses a differential cut, which means the outer shell fabric is cut to be wider than the inner shell fabric, so as the quilt curves over top of you, you don't have any kind of bunching of the fabric, bunching of the down, and then reduction in loft. At the head end, Rockfront's doing everything right in order to lock in heat around your neck and shoulders. There's a snap at the opening and then a cinch in order to close up the top around your neck and shoulders, and then a draft tube in order to really lock in heat. What Rockfront's doing really nice with this though is that the draft tube is nice and thick, so you don't need to really tighten the cinch really tight like you do with some quilts and then kind of feel like you're being choked. And then the cinch strap is a little bit stretchy and has some give. So as you toss and turn or shift positions, you're never feeling like you're being really constricted around your neck and shoulders. When it comes to how the quilt is being locked down onto the sleeping pad in order to reduce drafts and keep you warm, Rockfront's doing two really cool things. The first thing is that the pad straps they're using are really thick, and I find this helps with the pad strap not stretching too much and leading to the quilt kind of rising off of the sleeping pad as you toss and turn or shift from your back to your side. I found that quilts that use a thinner or more stretchy pad strap material, that the quilt will sometimes rise off of the pad as that pad strap stretches. The other thing that Rockfront's doing is that thing that I've mentioned I've emailed companies about before, and that's introducing a draft tube along the sides of the quilt. So instead of the pad strap clips being right at the edge of the quilt, there's a draft tube that runs along the edge right below them. And this really helps with drafts because anytime the quilt kind of rises off the quilt a little bit, this draft tube is going to fill that space and just really keep a good seal between the quilt and the pad. This is important because anytime you get any sort of gap between the quilt and pad, that's where you're going to be losing heat and then potentially getting cold. I'm not sure how much extra work it is to add the draft tube here, but it hasn't really increased the cost of this quilt. The Rockfront quilt is $300 US, which is, I think, an amazing price for such a high quality quilt that has so many amazing features. This draft tube really is a game changer for quilts geared towards that freezing or sub-freezing temperature range. And last night was a good test. I was tossing and turning a little bit more than usual. Temperatures were right at the limit of the quilt, and I did not feel any drafts coming in. Sometimes I have to adjust the quilt a little bit as I shift positions over the course of the night in order to eliminate a draft that might have occurred. But with this quilt, no drafts, no issues, no having to do any adjustments. It just was locked on the entire night. And to me, that's pretty darn cool. And the reason why the Rockfront quilt is now my go-to. That was a pretty fun trip. It was cool to go backpacking with all of my favorite go-to gear, which like I said, I've never done before. And while not all of it was ultralight, not all of it was comfort-based, it was a really nice balance, and I think all the gear surprisingly worked together pretty well. I'm feeling rested, I'm feeling recharged, but I am ready to get home to my girls. Go check out this video if you want to see me go backpacking with a base weight of only 6 pounds. That's insanely lightweight, but surprisingly, I didn't really sacrifice any comfort in order to achieve that weight.